make it. Hi, everyone. It's dietitian Ashley Koff. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. And if you see our guest looking down or distracted, I've just invited her to share this onto her page, because the more people that can get tips to manage stress easily and effectively, the better for all of us. So if this is your first time joining me, really grateful to have you here. If you're a healthcare practitioner, or if you are a patient, an individual looking for, or if you're a healthcare practitioner that's here because your own life is stressful, so you're looking for tips in that regard, we're super happy to have you. Just a little bit of the rules. Questions, please bring them. Let us know where you're joining from. If you have anything to share, if you want to just give us likes, thumbs up, hearts, we love all of that interaction. And if you are watching at a time that is better for you, so if you're catching this on a replay via YouTube or Facebook, awesome. Glad that you are using your time to join us. And by all means, ask a question, and I will make sure that I get Jessica to answer that question because she is our Better Nutrition expert. So these are Better Nutrition expert interviews, and I always like to take a moment to just define a Better Nutrition expert. I think it's really important today. I was actually just, I'm an entrepreneur advisor, I'm in the advisor to the entrepreneur group at Tufts, and I just had my first day of work yesterday. And we were talking a lot about how there's so much information that's out there, and people are taking information from all of these places. Yes, we know that. And it can be really confusing. Like, should we look at the science? But what if the science isn't really that applicable to us? Or what if the science is funded by someone else? And how do we even know all of that stuff? And so a Better Nutrition expert is somebody who's going to help you really sort through that, because they're trained to and have learned to assess and review the science, but then they balance it with being what I call practice-based. So science-based and practice-based. And that is because we need to know how to apply it to individuals, and we need to know that everybody has different stressors in their lives, and how their body responds to these things may be different. So a Better Nutrition expert is evidence-based, practice-based together, and that is why I invited Jessica Cording of Jessica Cording Nutrition here today. Hi. And what we want to do today is, Jessica is actually the proud author of a book that comes out in January, but is available for pre-order. And the win of pre-ordering it, especially for anyone who you want to gift anything to over the holidays, or pre-ordering it yourself, is that you can also send her through her hello@jessicacordingnutrition.com, her email, and all of this will be in the show notes. At the end here, you can actually get a free guided meditation, which is something I'm very excited to get, because wow, I didn't even think I was going to make it here today, Jessica. So I'm going to learn so much about these tips. My flight was delayed, and who knows, if we're going into a time of Mercury retrograde, so all this stuff is going to be craziness. So her book at Amazon.com is called Little Book Game Changers, and we're going to be, it's the Little Book of Game Changers, but the backslash is Little Book Game Changers. We're going to be talking about some and giving you a preview of some of those tips here. So Jessica, I thought by way of introduction, if you could share, you wear many hats, so I thought if you could share a little bit about the hats that you do wear as a professional, and also how you became really interested in this notion of, of changes, and how we could, as you say, like, just not have the drama and really get over that part, right? From a health standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of our days, I worked in clinical for years before, I did what I do now. And it's funny because I never had a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday job, even when I was doing clinical. I was always doing other things on the side because I was always interested in writing, communications. So I got a lot of exposure to other things. So I also did a lot of corporate wellness, was constantly writing while I was between things, and obviously doing a little bit of private counseling on the side. In 2017, I left my clinical job because my dad was sick, and I just needed to be there. I didn't need to be at the hospital every weekend. I needed to be with my dad and able to kind of drop everything and take him to the doctor or do whatever we needed to do to be with him. And it was so interesting because I took my entire business remote. The few private clients I had, we started working together using a digital app. But that was really at the time when I started doing a lot more. I started changing the way that I approached my work. I stopped thinking of it less in terms of wanting to do one-to-one coaching, and really started thinking bigger and more systemically. I was realizing, because I was also doing corporate wellness counseling, and I had, I still do those types of events sometimes, but I had a number of placements. So I was there for like a year, 2 years, one day a week, and getting to know what people were struggling with. And what I found was that it wasn't so much not knowing what was healthy and what wasn't healthy, because there's so much information about that. What I found the real struggle was for a lot of people was, how do they stay consistent with these healthy habits when they feel like they're super stressed, or they have no time, or they don't have tons of money to be spending on special products and services. So I really made it my focus to start working more on creating tools and resources, and partnering with food and lifestyle companies, tech companies, and really helping create approachable resources that people can use regardless of their income level, their location. I really wanted to help more people in that way, versus just pouring all my energy into the one-to-one coaching. And it was, that family emergency that got me to leave the nest.
The change on that part. And you're getting a lot of like hearts and thumbs up especially when you said it, it just can be overwhelming. And especially there isn't, when I think one of the key things is that you were just saying there's just so much information, right? And so why is it that just the acquisition of information isn't really what it takes to help us create a new habit? And in fact, maybe it keeps us from creating a new habit. I don't know. Tell me what you think.
No, that's such a good point, because what I have seen so many times, and of course, when I was a new RD, I, would try to give them all the information, or, in the hospital, we usually give information sheets, or if, hopefully I live to be very, very old and, become that like lady with dementia who spouts off crazy things. But like, I will probably be able to rattle off like the protein spiel I would give my post-op patients. Like, I will remember not even my own name, but I will still remember that.
Yes.
But it's funny, like what I've noticed over the years, and I still have a very small private practice. I do a little bit of coaching, because I do find that it keeps me in touch with what people are struggling with and what they need help with. And it keeps me out of the nutrition bubble. But I find that information overload can cause us sometimes to go into this state of paralysis, or we feel so overwhelmed it's hard to know where to start. And about, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago, I started experimenting with just giving like one change at a time, focusing on one teeny tiny little thing. Because what I was just finding that giving someone the information is very different from helping them apply it to their real life.
Right. And I feel like one of those questions on there, and apologies if anyone hears some ambient noise in the background, my dog Rerun is very excited for me to be back home, and so he just keeps coming over and letting me know that. But anyway, joyful. I think it's hard because with all that information, there's all these things that we should be doing, right? We're always hearing like, you should be doing this. So that's one piece where it's this pressure of, I know I should be doing. I think everybody like feels a bit of that in some capacity in their life. But sometimes, and I've had this experience with patients, and so I want your input on how we can help somebody feel good about it, which is, if there are 10 things that we know would make someone better, sometimes just doing one thing doesn't feel like it's enough. And so it feels like, so I'm going to just give a random example. If I've got diabetes, then it's like, well, I should start taking a supplement that's got all of these nutrients. I need to get rid of really reduce my added sugar. I know I need to start exercising because I'm not doing that. And the list goes on, right? And so how do you help someone figure out and how do we become okay with, hey, I'm just going to do one thing?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the power of small changes. So what if I have someone who's struggling with being okay doing just one thing, I really emphasize the fact that laying that strong foundation and really getting solid on that one thing helps them build on that success, and that maybe over time they're more capable of making more changes, or feeling like they're seeing more meaningful results. But I always emphasize that building from that solid place is what really is going to set them up for a long-term success. And I struggle with this in my own life. I'm terrible at celebrating my wins. I'm that person who like will forget to, pop the champagne because I'm like on to the next thing that I have to do. But I really do encourage people to celebrate their wins and note their progress and really take a chance to acknowledge it. And I often remind my clients, you're making steady progress. And I try to write that down in my own journal every night too.
Yeah.
Because it's important to be aware of the changes that you are making. So I do, when someone is struggling with that, that's usually the approach I'll take. But if they're struggling, I'll often ask why, or why doing one thing doesn't feel like enough.
I love that. So everybody that's listening, let's start with the first tip that we're getting here, which is celebrating your win, but really, especially even on a daily basis, whether you're using a journal or you just need to say it out loud to yourself or video yourself. We're so addicted to our phones. Like, why not use it for good to say like, hey, here's my win. Or pop it into your Instagram story and, let people know that part. I totally agree with you. So that's tip number one. So let's talk about, as you assemble the little book of game changers. And I love that note, that contra, like, we always think like, oh, there are all these other pieces. Is there a game changer that really led you to write that book? Like, was there one that you were like, okay, I know, like, easy, like, I definitely want to start with this one? Or are there a couple of them that you feel like are standouts? Let's start there.
Yeah, so it's funny because when I've told people I have a book coming out, the first question is it a cookbook or is it a diet book?
Right.
And actually, it's really more of a self-help book. In addition to being an RD, I'm also a health coach. But I grew up around a lot of alternative and complementary therapies. My mother, before she became a psychotherapist, was a hypnotherapist. So I grew up going to like all the wellness fairs.
Nice.
I've had probably had all the energy work, all the different reading, so that was kind of my background. So I had a lot of exposure to different ways of approaching, lifestyle change, and the whole mind-body connection always made tons of sense to me. So the book has sections for mind, body, and spirit. So when I was writing the book proposal, I decided to do 2 chapters for each section. And I know that for me in the mindset chapter, or the mindset section, the mind section, some of the ones that stood out to me were putting your own name on your calendar. I found that really meaningful because I think that reminder that our own well-being, our own priorities matter just as much as all the other stuff on our calendar. I think that's really powerful. With the body section, I actually shared. Well, I did one chapter about foods to help with stress management, just because I think that's a fascinating topic. Not stress management. I'm fascinated by the way that we talk about stress eating as a negative thing when there are so many foods that can positively impact our stress response, like on a cellular level.
Yeah.
So
we're going to come back to those because we're getting hearts and thumbs up. And so I want to go through that part, but I'm going to have you answer this. And I have one addendum question to what you were just saying. But we are coming back, everyone, to which foods help you deal with stress at the cellular level. Teaser, yes.
Yeah. And then the spirit section, that was actually a really fun part of the book to write, but there's a lot of stuff on journaling in the book, but actually one of the chapters I had a really good time writing for that was about oracle cards. If you follow me on Instagram, then you'll know that tarot cards are an everyday thing for me.
Yeah.
Not that I feel like necessarily we have to approach that stuff as like fortune telling, but I think that having that objective tool and like drawing that card and seeing what your reaction is to it, I think it just gives you a little food for thought. It tells you, your reaction tells you kind of what's on your mind, where you're at, and I think it can be a helpful way to kind of set you up for the day. So that was an interesting chapter to write.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I feel like I found a kindred spirit because that is something so important to me. Or I'll look at astrology, and again, I'm not looking for the psychic potential of it. I'm really looking for, as you said, like just kind of maybe a context and an understanding within that part. So I want to actually go back to something because we hear a lot today about dietitians and health coaches and this piece. And so the fact that you're both of them, I feel like that's really interesting. And I think something that a lot of different people can learn from on that part. So how would you express like sort of what those two different trainings have done, as well as obviously all the training you received from your family, and your, as you were just saying, your mom and all this exposure. Were you a health coach before a dietitian, or were you a dietitian and then became a health coach?
I had been an RD for about 5 years before I decided to become a health coach.
Okay.
I found that I was really well trained for medical nutrition therapy. I spent a good chunk of time working with patients with ALS and similar motor neuron diseases. Mm-hmm. So, you want a good solid tube feed order, I got you covered. Yeah. But when I was covering the post-op floors, or if I was doing corporate counseling for people with like weight management, blood sugar management, even though I had the nutrition basics down, I really felt like I wanted more education in terms of helping facilitate lifestyle change and different coaching techniques to really help guide them to make the progress they wanted to. Yeah. And I just felt like there might be some RD programs that have that kind of education baked into their curriculum. I don't really know. But when I was doing my training like 10 years ago, it was like private practice, clinical, or food service. There was like none of this other stuff. So I really wanted to be able to provide better support for, especially because I knew at that time that even though I loved clinical, because I have a big nerd brain in there, my heart wasn't like, I really felt like I wanted to be doing work in a different setting that was not that world. And I felt that to be able to do that, my writing background, I have a secret BFA in creative writing. Story for another day. But I just really felt like I needed that coaching training. But I even thought for about becoming an LCSW, but I didn't want to become a social worker. So that was it was a really nice compliment to my work as an RD, the health coaching training.
So fascinating. And whoever you are watching, I think what you can take from that is there are a lot of different, so there's some people that have all, like Jessica, have gone and done all these different ones and have it in herself. But I will tell you as a dietitian, and one of the reasons I asked the question is that I often love to have my patients then work with a coach, right? And sometimes that's happening in the fitness space, or somebody whose orientation really is about coaching and cheerleading, in that piece. But at the same time, also, if you're working with a health coach who doesn't have the medical nutrition therapy background, training, licensing, like that's this really great overlap. So thank you for taking a moment to talk about that. Okay, because everybody's actually super excited about this, let's dive into foods that and how they help at the cellular level. I'm totally with you. I think that how we talk about stress, especially this idea that stress is the bad thing, right? Instead of stress is actually like our bodies have a stress management system, so we just need to make sure it's working better. So what are some of the things that you identified, and how can we make it deliciously easy for people to manage their stress better at the cellular level?
Yeah, so there's two pieces to it. I mean, one, it was actually an experience I had that really opened my eyes to the power of food to help manage stress. When I had some wacky food cravings, like when my dad was diagnosed with cancer, I basically stopped sleeping, and my cortisol levels were off the wall. My sister got married in the midst of all this, and I got an infection from the wedding manicure, and I had to be on multiple rounds of antibiotics, which I hadn't been on for years. So my gut health was destroyed. So I didn't have that like support. And what I noticed was I started craving, and I write about this a little bit in the book. I have a chapter that's all about the importance of fat, and how to make sure you're getting enough and the right kinds of fat in your diet. And I wanted to eat wild sardines packed in olive oil. Like if it weren't for like knowing better about the importance of variety, I probably would have eaten them every single day. So I wanted that. I wanted it with like a big giant bitter arugula salad, and I wanted radishes cooked in butter and lots of salt and avocado. Like these were really intense cravings, which I wasn't used to having cravings. So I got curious about it. That's I always encourage when you're dealing with a food craving, get curious rather than critical. And I started digging into some of the research, and I had an idea of what some of the nutrients are in those foods, But, when I went to, got cozy with PubMed and the EAL, I was not surprised to find that the omega-3 fatty acids found in fish, there's a lot of research showing that they can help offset the effects of cortisol. It was not mysterious that I was craving, these different monounsaturated fats like olive oil and avocado. And leafy greens are a great source of folate, which is so important for maintaining healthy dopamine levels. And where I was at in my life at that point, my dopamine levels were probably taking a big hit. It was also the middle of winter, so that did not help anything.
So let's pause for 1 second in case anybody watching isn't as familiar as others might be with cortisol and dopamine and all of this part. Give just a quick overview of how that is working and when you're saying low or high, what that means.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. So cortisol, it's that stress hormone everybody loves to hate. When we talk about that fight or flight response, different hormones are excreted and, are pumped into our system. And what happens when we have, stress has a positive effect. It's like it exists because like if we needed to outrun a bear, like that stress is going to help us do that and not be thinking about our to-do lists. We're going to run. But when we have low grade chronic stress, we can have a higher baseline of some of these stress hormones, and it's not good for them to be chronically elevated, and it can cause inflammation in the body. That's a root cause of many different health conditions. Dopamine, it's a pleasure. It's kind of the pleasure chemical. So you want to have good, stable levels of dopamine, but again, it's all different things that can deplete it. And so it was interesting to notice that I was craving foods that are rich in folate, which is a nutrient it's a B vitamin that's really important for supporting stable levels of dopamine.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Was eating,
yeah. Well, then, you talk about a lot of neurotransmitters like serotonin, for example. I mean, a lot of those are produced in the gut. So when our gut health is not in tip-top shape, we're going to more likely to feel more bummed out. We're going to be feeling foggy. And I was definitely dealing with all of those things, aside from just the mental overload of having to keep a lot of stressful information in your head at once. But I developed this habit of eating sauerkraut like straight from the jar. Like I was single at the time, so I was the only one eating from the jar. So it was fine.
So it was okay on that part.
But again, like the probiotic bacteria and fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, yogurt, kefir, like I wanted it like 24/7. But again, I really feel like it was my body asking for help, fighting the stress and getting back to baseline.
You bring up something I think so important, several things very important, but one of them is just what we'll call caregiver syndrome. And I think that, that is certainly something that moms and dads experience after the first or second year of life of a child. It's something that we experience, if we're helping a loved one through something. It's something we experience if we're helping our dog through something, all of these pieces. Yeah. I think the comment that you're making about how it's kind of like all this it's all together, right? Like your digestive health. And then I got, when your digestive health isn't great, your immune system's suppressed. So then I got my nails done. And of course I got an infection. So then I'm, dealing with all of this other stuff. And it can feel very hard to not have those dominoes or to stop that like run of like, I'm just falling apart, especially after taking care of someone, and so I think some people that are listening might say what was very convenient that her body, that she had these cravings for amazing things, because when I had that experience, my cravings were for, ice cream and cookies, or I just was like, I'm at the doctor's office, the hospital, and it was just whatever I could have there and that piece. And so in keeping with the start of the conversation with the little book of Game Changers, where you're talking about, hey, let's just do one or two things. How would you start someone on a path if they're saying, like, you know what? I'm actually realizing that as I'm hearing her, I'm going back to, I kind of started to turn left from a health standpoint when I was taking care of someone. How would you start to turn them back towards helping themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I always ask them what they're frustrated by or what they feel is not working. because that's always a really good clue.
Okay.
I think it's going to be different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I will say 99% of the time, though, when it comes to starting to make changes, blood sugar balance is really, I feel like, where a lot of stuff attaches underneath. In the book, the chapter in which I introduce blood sugar balance, I call it Hanger Management 101. But it's so much more than that, as you know, and as any of our D folks know. But what I usually will introduce is this idea of what a balanced meal looks like and why it's important to have balanced meals. So I'll talk about when your blood sugar is stable because you're having a good balance of protein, fat, carbs. Your energy is better, you feel more satisfied, but also it supports, the function of different hormones and different things that, it's better for our emotional health as well. Mm-hmm. So we do talk about that and then give concrete examples. And I try to, it's funny, my clients at times have said I'm very, very gentle and very non-judgmental is a word that comes up a lot.
Okay.
Because I know that sometimes, you're at the hospital and like most hospitals don't have good food or you're on the road. And so it's really about I have a chapter in the book called the Overthink Proof Plate, where I offer a formula that anyone can use where they are, whether they're dining out, eating at home, on the road. So that way they can at least keep that in mind as they're figuring out what to eat. So they're not feeling that they're trying to figure it out on their own or it has to look a certain way.
So what would be, give us an idea of like a meal, so like either one out and one at home that you feel like are, hey, this is a very good stabilizing point. Of course, noting for anyone watching that it may not remotely work for you because you could be intolerant to the foods, not like them, not have them available. But I just want to hear from her a little bit about this balance and kind of this this approach that you're taking.
Yeah, I mean, I introduced it in the book, The Overthink Proof Plate, as filling half that plate with non-starchy veggies, quarter the plate with protein, and then some kind of carbohydrate for that last quarter. But I offer the option of if you want to have an alcoholic beverage or you want to have dessert, like you can kind of play with that last quarter of the plate. Or if you're needing to divide it, but that said, I know that some people might prefer to have like an extra source of fat because they feel like that's what they thrive on. So, one version of that plate might be like some cooked greens, a piece of baked salmon, and then, maybe either some roasted sweet potato, or if you prefer, like half an avocado. Or just do like a big salad and the salmon, and if you're me, you have a whiskey on the side.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I literally think you're my best friend. I'm like, oh, I love like whiskey or mezcal. This is great. Yeah, totally.
Oh, delicious.
Love that. Yes, so good.
Yeah.
So and celebrate that part. Okay, I love that. What about for breakfast? I find that that's a really hard time for people, especially if you're dealing, like if you're not feeling well and you wake up. Do you have a go-to from a breakfast standpoint? I would actually eat what you just said for breakfast, but let's go into like some of the more breakfasty options. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a savory breakfast person. In my 20s, I was not. I was on the oatmeal train for years. And then when I got to be about 28, like my body it didn't work anymore. I would just crash in the middle of the morning. And when I switched I found that for me, eating eggs, some kind of whatever leftover vegetables I had in the house, and then maybe like some sweet potato or avocado or whole grain toast or sprouted grain toast. But yeah, you could also do, if you're preferring something sweet, I'm a big fan of yogurt bowls or kefir in the morning. Really easy, like blank canvas. I know overnight oats, overnight chia pudding, they're very convenient. I'm so happy pea protein milk is a thing.
Yeah.
I personally have a lot of nut allergies and peanuts and coconut. So a lot of the plant-based milks I can't have.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that pea protein milk is available because, one, it actually, it's safe for a lot of different allergies. And a lot of people, soy is not a good fit either. But I love that it has some protein in it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the problem I have with the healthy recipes I see on the internet is I don't know why there's this misconception that almond milk, for example, has a lot of protein because it has like 1 gram. And no wonder you're hungry after you.
Yeah, you got to get your protein somewhere else on that part. I love, so two things. I love I think anyone who is hearing what Jessica's saying and then saying like, oh, I might have that crash in the morning, should take a look at your breakfast, because I think that notion of like, oh, if I switch over to eggs or egg muffins or, that kind of thing, I think there's a win there. And of course, if you're vegan, you could do, greens and hemp seeds and these other pieces. I will tell you, because we're starting, so full disclosure, most people who have heard me here, et cetera, they know I'm a consultant for Califia, and I think the pea protein piece is fantastic for being able to add that into either adding it yourself, et cetera. The one word of caution, because it's actually listed in Canada, is if somebody has a peanut allergy, I would be cautious, not concerned, but I would be cautious. So all the other nuts, you're going to be great. And I love that pea protein piece, but that's one that we're just making sure that people, have that awareness on that piece. But I love what you're saying, which is why, like, you can drink almond milk. You just don't want to assume that you're going to get protein there. So where are you going to get your protein in?
Yeah, and thank you for pointing that out about the peanuts. It's a really great point. And that actually wasn't on my radar, so I really appreciate that. That's really helpful to know.
It's actually newer, and it was not on my radar at all. I've been diving into this a little, and Beyond Meat, their burgers in Canada, the label actually carries a potential allergen interaction, but in Canada, not in the US. So I think what I just, it's all those things of proceed with caution. I got really worried because there was a family where a child has an anaphylactic reaction to peanut, and they were going to switch him over and start introducing, they're like, oh, we love the Beyond Meat, we love these other things. And I was like, let's be really careful here. So I think it's I think, again, severity of allergies and tolerance, but it hasn't been on our radar. So, it's something we can learn from. So I want to, we have a couple more minutes, and I had two questions that came in, so I want to make sure that I get to them. But one of the things that I'm curious about, because I love how you've segmented the book, how do you address, I don't want to lead the witness too much on this one, body movement, activity. I don't want to use the word exercise, so I'm just telling you I'm trying to avoid that word. But how do you address that in terms of creating the habits that actually are those game changers for us?
Yeah, so I actually, for certain topics in the book, I interviewed people who are experts in those areas, because I felt like I refer out in real life, so why not in this book?
Yeah.
So I interviewed a few personal trainers, for example, and fitness instructors to get their input too. But what I really focused on was noting the benefits of exercise for stress management. But I also focused on for activity to be part of your life, it really should be something that you enjoy, that you feel adds something to your life versus something that you think you should do, like the sexy shoulds. It's so alluring to get caught up in I should do this, I should do that, and really just like getting super simple with it and be like, what feels good to me? What kind of activity do I enjoy? What realistically fits into my week? Like, even if it's like a plank in your pajamas, like whatever, it's really that idea of that something is better than nothing, and figuring out what works for you and that it might be different from what works for someone else.
Oh, I love that. Okay, good. So I got one question on here from a woman who has, a very similar, I'm going to sum this up because that we've got something longer, in terms of a similar experience with a family member in that piece, and is really struggling to figure out how to take care of herself while taking care of someone else, and that guilt of selfishness. So I'm kind of throwing it all out there. So I actually want to bring that up because it's something I did not get to in asking you, and you shared in your pre-interview, just about how do we deal with the saboteur, I think it's a mental saboteur of self-care and selfishness. So let me ask that question.
Yeah. Oh man, I actually just recorded a meditation for this on this topic for Simple Habit, because I create guided meditations for their app, and I've struggled with this so much. But really, what I do genuinely feel it comes down to is reminding yourself, in whatever way works for you, that when you take care of yourself, even if it's just doing one thing a day for yourself, even if it's like taking a deep breath or finding 3 minutes to meditate, or working out for a half hour, like whatever fits that day, like taking it one day at a time. But really, when we do take time to nurture our own health and well-being, it really does help us show up for the people in our life. I know that for myself, I ended up having an allergic reaction to one of those antibiotics. And I literally had to lie, it was an embarrassment. I basically laid there in a Benadryl stupor for a day and just thought about all the things that were and were not working in my life and how I really needed to get real about self-care, because I was so out of touch with my own body and the things that were happening. Like, I thought it was like eczema and until it started going up to my face and my throat. But I was so focused on my dad, I wasn't thinking about myself. I was like, I'm eating okay, I'm going to yoga, like I'm fine, but I wasn't sleeping. And I think that that was a really big wake-up call for me, because like I was so not paying attention to my own self-care that I technically could have died, and my dad did not need that. So I know that it is really hard when you are juggling a lot, or you feel like there's no time, or you do feel guilty taking the time. I think that asking for support, even though it's hard, is really important. And often I think you'll be pleasantly surprised that there are people that are willing to support you and have kind of been waiting all along for you to ask. But I think just reminding yourself that when you take care of yourself, it really helps you better take care of the other people in your life.
So you mentioned, I want to just drop it in the comment section. You mentioned, is it Simple Habit as an app?
Yeah.
Okay. And is it is there anything on there that's free, or is everything you purchase the app? Tell me about that.
So there is some free content.
Great.
So there's a lot of like freestanding meditations, but they also have a few different subscription models too.
Great. Okay, I'm adding that in there for anyone. Okay, great. Wow. Okay. And then I think another question. How do I sum this up? Around supplements, we're going. Oh, this is going back to the stress, getting in those nutrients. So how do you contextualize, and do you talk about it at all in the book in terms of you said your body's craving foods. You're talking about foods that are rich in these sources. Can you use supplements? Will supplements be as effective? What's sort of your POV on the supplement space?
Yeah, I don't get into supplements too much in the book because I feel like that could be its own book.
Yeah,
but like
totally.
I do use supplements in my practice. Not a ton. I take it on a case-by-case basis. I will sometimes, for example, use magnesium. For example, if someone's feeling a lot of stress, obviously you have to be careful with digestion. Like if they're having if someone has like diarrhea, I'm not necessarily going to start with magnesium. I usually do try to do food first, but for certain nutrients, I found magnesium very helpful. Probiotics I often end up using. Depending what someone's diet is like, we might supplement certain nutrients like omega-3s or vitamin B12, or just do a B complex, different. If I have someone who wants to be doing herbs, I might refer them to an herbalist if they want really specialized, because I just don't have that training to provide. I'm not a board certified herbalist. I'd rather put them in the hands of someone who is. But I do use supplements, and I think that where there are gaps in the diet or where someone has elevated needs of a particular nutrient, I do think that they can be helpful.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I just feel like, one, I can understand why you do meditations, because your voice is so awesome in terms of like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, I feel better just listening. So just a reminder to everyone, and I apologize at the very start of the interview, I don't know why I didn't have on the screen Jessica's information and the book information. It was supposed to be there. So it went, as we started talking, it went up. But so we have her website here. We have the title of the book. We'll also put that in the show notes. And what we want to invite you to do is get the book, pre-order the book. And when you pre-order it, you'll get a little email like from Amazon with your receipt, and you can send it over to this website. So she's just hello@jessicacordingnutrition.com. And you can send that over there, and you'll get this free guided meditation. Great to have it to use ahead of the holidays. And maybe that's all that you take on, going through ahead of the holidays. And then you can get this book in January. I love the notion of taking a look at this book in January so that you're not going down the rabbit's hole of like, I'm going to put all my hope in a new the alkaline forming diet 2020, or whatever it is on that part. So Jessica, thank you so much. I'm really excited about the book. And everyone, if anyone wants to reach you, they can get to you at jessicacordingnutrition.com. And likewise on social media, right? You're at Jessica Cording. Is that right? Or
I'm on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Jess Cording.
Jess
and
Cording.
Facebook, I'm at Jessica Cording Nutrition.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, everyone. And if you're watching this on YouTube and it's on the replay and you like what you saw, please give us a thumbs up. But most importantly, we are really just trying to change and help everyone get healthier with these little nuggets. This is our opportunity. And so if there's anything that you heard today that you think could help somebody else, please just share the video so that they can get this knowledge and they can meet just an incredible better nutrition expert in Jessica Cording. So Jessica, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you. I'll be seeing you later this week. So that's great. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, take care.
All right. Night.